So have you ever walked through a zoo, looked at the animals, and thought, gee, I'd like to have one of those? Well, today I'd like to discuss with you how you can own an exotic animal. So I'm going to tell you about the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife requirements, the United States Department of Agriculture requirements, and then general requirements that you need to have in order to care for any animal. So this topic is important to me because I'm extremely interested in working with exotic animals. It's important to have knowledge of the steps that you need to take in order to own an exotic animal. So to ensure its life and health of the animal and to make it legal. This topic is important to you guys because at one point or another, you probably, when you were younger, you probably thought that you wanted some type of exotic animal, probably. I always wanted a penguin. What do you guys want?
I wanted a monkey.
Really?
Forever.
I wanted a chimpanzee.
Oh.
I don't know.
So Wikipedia.
I wanted a tiger.
Okay, that works. Wikipedia defines exotic animals as a rare or unusual animal pet, or an animal captive pet, which you wouldn't normally think would be a pet. But how would you be able to own an exotic animal? So the person I met was Cheryl Jones, and what she does is she has this big exhibit that she has all types of animals, exotic animals, and so she raises exotics for some that are endangered species, and then she also crossbreeds to ensure the species. So she also rescues a bunch of animals and rehabilitates some when they're healthy enough. And this is kind of her program. It's called Walk on the Wild Side. So this is kind of like all the fairs that they've done and gone to. And there's a little more. So this is some types of their exotics and then some of the reptiles they have. Okay, so first, let's look at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife requirements that need to be met in order to own any exotic animal that is native to Oregon. So, for example, a wolf. So, first, you need to have must secure a wildlife holding permit. So, you need to be able to tell the animals, the number of animals you have are captured, and then the source of where you got those animals. And then any wildlife held in captivity must be treated in a humane manner. So, they come and regulate and make sure that all the requirements are met. You also need to make sure that facilities of wildlife must be maintained in sanitary conditions and large enough area to provide exercise for those animals and certain enough to prevent escape. So you wouldn't want an exotic animal to escape. And secondly, we're going to look at USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. This is usually the Animal and Plant Health Inspection, which is called APHIS. I believe that only trained qualified people should be able to own these animals. You wouldn't want somebody who is unprofessional to have a tiger. So, let's see. The APHIS is responsible for enforcing the Animal Welfare Act, which regulates and inspects exhibitors of wild and exotic animals. So, if you're an owner or a person in charge of any type of business, the law requires you to be licensed or registered with the USDA. So, and then based on the information you get from APHIS gives, they'll decide if you need to be licensed or registered. So if you were licensed, you need to tell the number and species of the animals that you have, the annual income received from exhibiting animals, and then from trading in animals. So registration is like non-commercial exhibits that do not charge admission of any exhibited animals, only needs the area. So there are different types of licenses. The first license, License A, is for breeders and deal in animals that breed and raise, so it's only one specific animal that they have. And then License B includes brokers and operators of auction sales. And then License C includes animal exhibitors. So Cheryl would be included in License C. And then we're going to look at the animal requirements that you need to have, even if it's like an exotic animal or a dog or a cat. So you need to know what do they eat, and you also need to know the natural habitat. That way you can create some type of enclosure that includes some of their habitat. And you also need to understand animal behavior, because animals are extremely unpredictable, and you need to be able to understand like if an animal is going to lunge at you or not. So this is just some of the animals that Cheryl had. So it's called the Conemundi. So they're small little mammals. They look kind of like raccoons. So they are found in wooded areas. So for his case, she had him in a semi-pre-caged enclosure, and then she had things for him to go on and crawl on so that he can get his exercise. And then so his diet consists of both plant and animal matter, so you can have both. And this is Tanzanian tabbies. They look kind of like guinea pigs, or related to guinea pigs. I actually think they look more like rabbits. So these like grasslands and brushlands, and they eat vegetative, but prefer grass and herbs. And then a caracal, they have longer legs and similar appearances than the lynx, but they don't look like them. And their habitat is dry steppes and semi-deserts, but can also include woodland. And so they are basically nighttime hunters, and so they'll hunt for their meat eaters, which is more like cats. And the binturong bear, these are extremely rare. She only had one, and she didn't think she was going to have another one, but their tails are like kind of like arms. They can use it as an extra arm. And they give off a popcorn scent. These habitats are usually dense forests, and again, with the binturong bear that she had it in an enclosure that was completely secure and in the back so that people couldn't see him so much because he's just like people. And they also have things for him to climb on. And they eat small vertebrates and invertebrates, and sometimes fruit that's invisible. And the African crested porcupine, which is the largest porcupine on Earth. And unlike the typical, you think that porcupines can shoot their clothes, they don't actually shoot them. If they sense an enemy, they'll actually back up and move towards the animal and make sure that they get away from them. So their habitat is forests and plantations, and they eat a lot of grass and fruits and insects and berries mostly. So as far as behavior goes, when she had her lion there, and she'd take her for walks, you can have to observe, like if she's going to go over and attack somebody, or like when we were playing the corn maze, when we were walking with her, she would, Nadia, the lion, would hide and then try to attack me, but we saw that occurring, so we know that we need to stay back a little more. So you need to develop safety plan for working with specific animals. So you need to have good enclosures. Explain factors which stimulate or discourage different types of animal behaviors. So if they behave irrationally, you understand those types of behaviors. And then recognize the normality of animal behavior. If your animal is sick, how would you know? You need to be able to explain that factor. Okay, so identify given species, variable protection numbers. So you need to know the typical birth weight so that you know if the animal is unhealthy or not. And then you need to also ensure whether or not you need to handle them personally. So in summary, I've just told you the fish and wildlife requirements that you need to have in an animal is native area, so like in Oregon area, that's when you need fish and wildlife requirements. And then for USDA, you need to be licensed or registered if you are regulating the business or breeding animals. And then you must know the facts about your animals, always, you know, to maintain their health. In conclusion, I hope you learned something about how you can have your own exotic animal. Not many people can say that they have, like a lion or a tiger. Or a bear.
Mine.
No, we're not going to say the other one.